There's something about a campfire that makes people honest. Maybe it's the darkness beyond the light. Maybe it's the way the trees look like silhouettes of things you almost recognize. Or maybe it's because when you're out there, far from streetlights and locked doors, you remember how thin the distance is between safe and alone. Tonight I have 3 true campfire horror stories. These were sent in by viewers who've spent real time outdoors, campers, hikers, and people who learned the hard way that the woods don't always feel the same after dark. As always, names and identifying details have been changed for privacy. But the events, the fear, and the moments that made them realize something was wrong, that part is exactly how they told it. So turn the lights down. And if you're listening with headphones, just remember, in the woods, it's not silence you should be afraid of. It's the sound that doesn't belong. Story 1. The Third Shadow. This first story was sent in by someone I'll call Ryan. Ryan said he and his best friend, Jake, took a weekend trip to a small campground near a lake. Nothing remote or extreme. It was one of those places families go: designated fire pits, numbered sites, a small bathroom building, and a ranger station at the entrance. Ryan and Jake were both in their early 20s, and they were convinced they didn't need much. A tent, a cooler, some cheap camping chairs, and enough food to feel like they were surviving out there. They got to the campground late in the afternoon. The sun was still up, the lake was bright, and the entire place felt harmless. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking, a couple of RVs with music playing softly in the background. They set up their tent, gathered some firewood, and did what people always do when they're camping for the first time in a while. They forgot how quickly daylight disappears. By the time they had the fire going, the sky had already turned that deep blue that makes everything look colder than it is. And when the last bit of sunlight finally slipped behind the trees, the campground changed. Not dramatically, not like a movie where fog rolls in and the music goes quiet. Just subtly, like a room where someone turned down the volume and you didn't notice until you tried to speak. Ryan said that was when they noticed their neighbors. 2 campsites down, a group of 3 guys had set up a very similar camp. Small tent, small fire, cheap chairs. Ryan didn't think anything of it at first. But Jake leaned closer and said, "Those guys have been watching us since we got here." Ryan laughed, because it sounded paranoid. But then he looked over, and one of them was staring straight at him. Not a casual glance. Not the normal curiosity of campers sharing a space. A steady, unblinking look that didn't change when Ryan noticed it. Ryan lifted a hand, half a wave. The guy didn't wave back. He just kept looking. Jake muttered, "Told you." Ryan tried to shake it off. Maybe the guy was zoning out. Maybe he was tired. Maybe Ryan's face reminded him of someone. There are 100 harmless reasons someone might stare. But it didn't stop. Every time Ryan glanced over, the same guy was still watching. And sometimes, the other 2 were too. Jake suggested they walk down to the lake and get away from it. So they did. They grabbed 2 beers, left their fire low, and followed the path through the trees toward the water. The lake was calm, reflecting the moon like a thin strip of glass. They stood there for a while, talking about normal things: work, friends, the kind of conversation people have when they want to pretend the night isn't pressing in. After about 20 minutes, they went back, and the 3 guys' campfire was out. Ryan said that wasn't the weird part. Campers put out fires. People go to bed early. It happens. The weird part was that the chairs were still there, and the tent was still there, and the cooler was still there. But the campsite looked abandoned, like someone had gotten up and walked away in the middle of setting it up. Ryan and Jake went back to their fire. Jake kept looking into the darkness between the trees. Ryan asked him what he was doing. Jake said, "Listen." Ryan stopped talking and listened. At first, he heard nothing but normal night sounds. Crickets, a distant laugh from another campsite, wind moving through leaves. Then he heard footsteps. Soft, careful, on dry leaves. Not on the main campground road. Not on the gravel path. In the woods behind them. Ryan's stomach tightened. Jake stared into the darkness and whispered, "Someone's behind us." Ryan did the thing most people do when they're scared. He tried to explain it away. A deer. A raccoon. Someone walking to the bathroom building. But the footsteps didn't sound like an animal. They sounded human. Jake stood up, grabbed the flashlight, and shined it behind their campsite. The beam cut into the trees and landed on nothing. No eyes reflecting. No animal shape. No person. Just darkness. Jake kept the light steady and said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, "Hello?" No answer. The footsteps stopped. Ryan said they both stood there, not moving, waiting for something. And for a moment, it felt like they were holding their breath for the entire forest. Then Jake lowered the flashlight and sat back down, forcing a laugh. Is less than #0. 7# is greater than. Probably nothing. Ryan tried to agree, but he couldn't stop looking toward the neighboring campsite, the one that now looked empty. Because from where they sat, their firelight threw shadows across the ground. 2 big shadows, one from Ryan and one from Jake, stretching behind them like dark, melted versions of themselves. And then Ryan noticed there was a third shadow. Not a full shape, not a clear silhouette, just the suggestion of one right between theirs. Ryan blinked hard and leaned forward, trying to see if something was casting it. Maybe a tree branch, maybe a stump, maybe something on the edge of the light. But when he moved, the third shadow moved too. It shifted, like a person shifting their weight. Ryan didn't say anything at first. He just watched it, heart thumping. Then he nudged Jake with his elbow and said quietly, "Don't turn around." Jake frowned. "What?" Ryan swallowed. There's another shadow." Jake went still. Ryan could hear him breathing. Jake whispered, "Where?" Ryan said, "Behind us." They both stared at the ground. 2 shadows. And then, that third one. Too close. Too upright. Too human. Jake's hand moved slowly toward the flashlight. Ryan said he could feel the moment stretching like the forest was leaning in to see what they'd do. Jake grabbed the flashlight and snapped it around behind them. The beam landed on the empty neighboring campsite. The tent. The chairs. The cooler. And a man standing perfectly still between the trees. He wasn't close, maybe 15 or 20 feet back. But he was close enough that the light caught his face. Ryan said the man didn't look like a camper. No jacket. No hat. No backpack. Just a dark hoodie, hood up, hands hanging at his sides like he'd been waiting. Jake shouted, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The man didn't answer. He didn't move. He just stared at them, eyes reflecting faintly in the light like a cat's. Except it wasn't an animal. Jake took a step forward, still holding the flashlight on the man. "Ranger," Jake said, raising his voice. "Hey, Ranger." The man took one step backward into the darkness, then another, and then he was gone, swallowed by the trees. Ryan and Jake didn't talk. They grabbed their keys, kicked sand over their fire, and walked fast toward the bathroom building where there were lights. They found a ranger near the entrance, sitting in a truck. Jake told him what happened. The ranger's face tightened immediately. He asked, "Which campsite?" Jake pointed. The ranger said, "Stay here." Then he drove down the campground road slowly, spotlight sweeping. Ryan and Jake waited by the lit building for about 10 minutes. When the ranger came back, he told them to pack up and leave. Jake asked why. The ranger hesitated. Then he said, "Those 3 guys, that campsite you mentioned, they checked out earlier today." Ryan felt his stomach drop. "Checked out?" The ranger nodded. "They left. This afternoon. We had a problem with them." Jake asked, "So who was in their campsite?" The ranger looked back toward the dark trees and said quietly, "That's why you're leaving." Ryan said they drove home that night, silent, both watching the rearview mirror like they expected to see another set of headlights. And for months afterward, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about that third shadow. Because if the man had been standing there long enough to cast it, then he'd been close enough to touch them. And they never would have known. Story 2. The Whistle. The second story was sent in by someone I'll call Hannah. Hannah said she'd been hiking and camping since she was a kid, and she wasn't easily spooked by normal wilderness things. Bears, coyotes, owls that scream like someone being hurt. She knew all of it. But one weekend, she went on a solo camping trip that changed how she sleeps outdoors forever. Hannah chose a small backcountry campsite about a 2-hour hike from the trailhead. It wasn't deep wilderness, but it was far enough that you wouldn't see families or kids on bikes. Mostly experienced hikers. Mostly quiet. Mostly exactly what she wanted. She set up her tent before sunset, filtered water from a creek, cooked a simple meal, and sat by her small fire with a book. Everything felt normal, comfortable, the kind of night that makes you understand why people fall in love with the outdoors. Then, around 10 p.m., she heard a whistle. Not a bird call, not whine through trees, a human whistle. 2 short notes, then one long one. Hannah froze, book still open in her lap. She sat perfectly still and listened for more. A minute passed. Then the whistle came again. 2 short, 1 long. It was coming from the darkness beyond her firelight. Not right next to her, but close enough that she could tell it wasn't far down the trail. Hannah said her first thought was, another camper. Maybe someone got separated. Maybe someone was signaling to a friend. But this was a designated backcountry site. Only one group is supposed to occupy it. And she was alone. She called out, "Hello?" No response. The fire popped softly. The creek gurgled somewhere in the distance. And then, the whistle came again. 2 short, 1 long. Hannah stood up, grabbed her headlamp, and swept it around the trees. The beam caught trunks and leaves and darkness. No person. No movement. She told herself she was overreacting. Maybe someone was farther away than she thought. Sound does weird things outdoors, especially at night. So she did what you're supposed to do. She put out her fire, got into her tent, and zipped it shut. She kept her headlamp on for a while, listening. She didn't hear footsteps. She didn't hear branches breaking. Just the normal night. And she started to relax. Then the whistle happened again. This time it was closer. 2 short notes. 1 long one. And then, a pause. and a new pattern. One short, one short, one long. Hannah said her stomach dropped because she realized it wasn't random. Someone was changing their signal, like they were responding to something. She held her breath and listened for another sound. And that's when she heard it. A second whistle. Farther away. Deeper in the woods. It answered the first one. Two short, one long. Hannah's hands started to shake, because now she understood what she was hearing. Two people, communicating, and she was in the middle of it. She reached for her phone, but there was no service. She had a satellite messenger, but it was in her pack. Outside the tent, she told herself she could grab it quickly. Just unzip is less than #0. 4# is greater than step out. Reach into the pack. Hit SOS. But she couldn't make herself move, because the first whistle was now very close. So close that she could hear the breath between notes. Hannah said she curled up inside the tent, holding her headlamp like it was a weapon. She kept her eyes on the zipper seam, waiting for a shadow to block the moonlight. Then, something touched the tent. Not a heavy impact. Not a bear brushing past. A light press. Like a hand. Hannah froze so hard she felt pain in her shoulders. The fabric shifted again, gently. A slow push, like someone testing where she was. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just listened. And she heard the faintest sound right outside her tent. Breathing. Then, right by her ear through the thin tent wall, a whisper. Not words she could understand. Just a soft murmur. And then the whistle, right outside. Two short, one long. Hannah said she heard the distant whistle answer. Then footsteps, moving away. She lay there for what felt like an hour, waiting for the tent to be touched again. But it wasn't. The woods went quiet. At first light, she didn't pack normally. She didn't make breakfast. She didn't even fully come out of the tent. She unzipped it just enough to grab her pack, yanked it inside, and hit the SOS button on her messenger. Then she waited. When rangers arrived a few hours later, she told them everything. The whistles, the tent touch, the whisper. The ranger asked a question that made Hannah feel cold. Did you whistle back? Hannah said no. Of course not. The ranger nodded slowly and said, Good. Then he added, quieter. We've had people do that. They think it's funny, or they think it's another camper. Hannah asked what happens. The ranger looked toward the trees and said, Sometimes we don't find their camp again. Story 3. The Ranger's Warning. The third story was sent in by someone I'll call Eli. Eli said he went camping with his girlfriend at a state park that had a reputation for being safe. It had marked trails, frequent ranger patrols, and campsites close enough together that you could hear someone laugh from the next one over. They arrived in the evening, set up quickly, and made dinner over the fire. Eli said it was one of the nicest nights they'd had in a while. No work calls. No noise. Just them, the fire, and the comforting idea that the park staff was nearby if anything went wrong. Around 9:30, a ranger walked through the campground. He wasn't checking permits or being strict. He was just doing a slow loop, flashlight in hand, nodding at campers. When he reached Eli's campsite, he stopped. He looked at their fire, then at their tent, then at Eli and his girlfriend. And he asked, casually, "Just the two of you tonight?" Eli said yes. The ranger nodded, then said something that felt like it didn't belong in a casual conversation. If you hear someone walking around your tent tonight, don't come out. Eli laughed at first, because he thought the ranger was joking. But the ranger didn't smile. Eli asked, "Is that a thing?" The ranger glanced down the campground road, then back at them. "It happens," he said. "People wander. People get lost. People do stupid stuff." Then he lowered his voice and added, "And sometimes it's not people." He stood there for a moment, like he was debating whether to say more. Then he pointed toward the bathroom building. "If you need help, come to the light. Don't go into the trees." Then he walked away, leaving Eli with an uncomfortable feeling he couldn't explain. Eli tried to brush it off. Rangers say weird things sometimes. They see drunk campers. They deal with wildlife. Maybe he was just trying to keep people safe. Still, Eli said he and his girlfriend put the fire out earlier than they normally would have. They got into the tent, zipped it shut, and lay there listening to the campground settle. At first, everything was normal. Distant voices. A car driving slowly down the road. Then, quieter and quieter, until it felt like only their breathing remained. Eli said he was drifting off when his girlfriend whispered, "Do you hear that?" Eli listened. Footsteps. Slow steps on gravel, moving through the campground road. Not near their tent yet, but approaching. Eli held his breath. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer. Then they stopped right outside their tent. Eli said he could see a shadow through the fabric, something tall standing between the tent and the fire pit. A voice came from outside. A man's voice. "Hey," it said. "Can you help me?" Eli's girlfriend tensed beside him. Eli didn't respond. The man spoke again. "I'm lost. I can't find my campsite. My phone's dead." Eli said the voice sounded wrong. Not obviously fake. Not like a movie villain. Just too calm. Like someone practicing a line. The man continued, "Just come out for a second. I just need directions." Eli's heart hammered. He remembered the ranger's words. "Don't come out." So he stayed silent. The man sighed loudly. Then he shifted his weight, and Eli heard something that made his stomach drop. A second set of footsteps. Not on the road. In the leaves beside the tent. Someone else was moving around them. The man outside spoke again, voice a little sharper now. "Come on. I can see you're awake." Eli said he could see the shadow lean closer to the tent, like the man was trying to look through the fabric. Then the zipper moved. Just a tiny tug. A test. Eli grabbed the inside zipper pull with one hand, holding it in place. His girlfriend's hand clutched his arm so hard it hurt. Outside, the man chuckled softly. A quiet sound that didn't match "lost." Then he said something that made Eli's blood run cold. "Okay," he said. "Then we'll just wait." The footsteps in the leaves moved again, circling. Eli heard someone step close to the back of the tent. Then pause. Then step away. It went on like that for minutes. No more talking. Just movement. Eli said it felt like they were being inspected. Like people were looking for a weakness, an unzipped seam, a loose stake, a place they could pull the fabric up and reach in. Eli's girlfriend was shaking so hard the sleeping pad squeaked. Eli whispered for her to breathe, slowly. To stay still. Then, suddenly, Everything stopped. No footsteps. No rustling. No breathing outside. Eli waited, listening so hard his ears hurt. A full minute passed. Then another. Eli said he began to think maybe it really had been a lost camper who gave up. And then the ranger's flashlight hit their tent. A bright beam moved across the fabric. A voice called out, "Ranger Station, is everyone okay?" Eli shouted back immediately, almost cracking his voice. Yes, someone was here. The ranger told them to stay inside. Eli heard the ranger's radio crackle. He heard hurried footsteps. Then the ranger said, quietly, but close enough that Eli heard it clearly, "They're gone." Eli asked, through the tent, "Who?" The ranger didn't answer directly. He said, "Stay zipped. I'm going to escort you to the station." Eli and his girlfriend came out only when the ranger told them to. The ranger stood with his flashlight and something else in his hand. Eli said it looked like pepper spray, or maybe a small baton. As they walked toward the lit building, Eli glanced back at their tent. And in the dirt near the back, he saw footprints. Not one set, not two, at least three. The ranger followed his gaze and said, "Yeah, that's why I told you not to come out." Eli asked how the ranger knew. The ranger hesitated, then said, "Because last month, someone did." And Eli said the way the ranger spoke flat, controlled, like he was reciting something he didn't want to think about, made it clear that whatever happened last month, it didn't end with someone getting directions. The woods don't need ghosts to be frightening. They don't need monsters. They don't even need stories. All they need is distance. Distance from help. Distance from light. Distance from the feeling that someone else is awake when you're trying to sleep. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And if you have a true camping or hiking story you'd like featured, you can send it in for a future video. Until next time, stay safe. And if you hear something in the dark that sounds like it knows you're there, don't answer it.